Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott Salford.
Josh, your friend, it's day 2 of the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition rollout, and we had a big old response to yesterday's video, just sort of me diving in on midnight, going, what the hell's this, and then reporting back after a few hours of game time. A lot of people in a similar situation, because it seems like the overall launch of the supposed Definitive Edition, or Trilogy, of the original GTA games, is a bit of a disaster. There's a lot of different things to get to. One thing to open on is that the current PC version is not available for sale. Now, this is partly to do with Rockstar's overall server checks. They've also removed GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 from the Rockstar launcher, and from general availability. That is a server-side thing that they need to tweak. However, it relates to the GTA Definitive Edition Trilogy, because why are those original games now online-only mandated? The game literally freezes and wants you to re-establish a connection with the Rockstar servers if they go down whatsoever. It's very Bethesda. It's very like what Bethesda did with Doom, and it's one of those things, alongside the big old pile of everything else that's wrong with this, that just makes you scream, what the hell were you guys doing?
Well, that's it, man. Like you say, this isn't just a GTA Trilogy issue, but the fact that it's impacted the GTA Trilogy on launch day just absolutely sucks. The exact thing that happened is that the Rockstar Games launcher, which a lot of its games you need to use, obviously, has gone down for maintenance, but that's coincided with the launch of the GTA Trilogy. At the time of recording this, it's been coming up to about 15-ish hours that these games have been unplayable, and according to VGC, Video Games Chronicle, who did a write-up on this, apparently they've also taken the GTA Trilogy off sale for the PC version because they don't want people buying it and then being like, oh, I can't play it. But that doesn't really make it better for the people who did buy it and then can't play it. But yeah, like you said, this opens up a whole question about, why are these single-player games tied to this online launcher in the first place? And it's just one of the many things that's kind of compounding to make this overall launch nowhere near as smooth as Rockstar would have wanted.
No, and it's like there's no server sync thing on the console side. It is a very weird, pointless thing to have on unless they were just tracking some sort of data for some sort of implication or integration in the future. But that's just one of many things. Something else, and we're going to pick a lot of stuff apart. We're going to have another video coming up in the next few days about the way that Rockstar have handled the rollout to this thing. Obviously, the developer is Grove Street Games, former War Drum Studios. They were responsible for the 10th anniversary versions of the games back in the early 2010s. So there's quite a bit to pick apart in regards to the marketing and the way that they've approached it, because I do feel like there is a split fandom right now. There's people who thought they were getting something more adjacent to GTA 5 because that game was mentioned in the run-up to release. It was on the press release. Take-Two Strauss Zelnick was mentioning it. And then there's the other wing of the fandom that's just happy these games are available with nicer visuals, which I've got one foot in both camps. I'm a massive GTA fan. I'm glad that the games look so good. But I think it's worth addressing all the other stuff too. And in the middle of all that is the base reality that the game's frame rate, general performance is pretty terrible. Let's touch on performance. You've got the Switch version coming in at 480p, very, very blurry. It's fine-ish on the handheld version, but if you dock it, it gets very blurry as the game tries to upscale it to get something more approximating a high-end resolution. It just looks terrible. The base versions on PS4, PS5, Xbox, and Series, they all have very big frame rate dips and crashes. I've experienced them myself. I had a crash again last night. That stuff is just something where it screams that it should have been left in the oven for a bit longer.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when we did our video yesterday, it was mostly you talking about your first impressions because you got it at midnight. I've since jumped into it. Only GTA 3 at the moment because I'm going through them one at a time. But yeah, even I've started to encounter some of this stuff. And while I still think there's a good game in there, it's just, you mentioned yesterday that it's a death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's not like one issue that's making this such a big deal. It's all of these little changes, all of these little issues, all of these little bugs, all of these weird, rollouts from Rockstar themselves, and that includes the actual performance. I've had frame drops, but more importantly, I've had glitches in the world that have resulted in lost progress. This is an old school experience, so if you die in GTA 3 during a mission, you go right back to the start and you have to do it all again. And nothing is more frustrating than when you get right to the end of one of these missions and suddenly your car is stuck on an invisible object, flames start coming out of the bonnet, you explode, and you have to go right back to the beginning. It's stuff like that it isn't a game ruiner in entirely, but they add up, is what we're saying. They add up. It's not a completely horrendous trilogy, but there are a lot of issues worth talking about.
No, man. The thing is, I might try and put together like a pros and cons style video because I feel like everyone's obviously dogpiling on it, and that was a lot of the focus of our video yesterday was the amount of stuff that they've got wrong. There are obviously things that are big positives. The visuals overall are obviously a major step up when it's not focused on specific character models or the glitches or parts of the geomesh of the world that have been like changed for the wrong way. There is a time where you can just put the camera behind a character, look at a nice vista, and it looks very nice. The Miami Strip or the Vice Strip in Vice City looks stunning. There are the increased draw distance in GTA 3 looks really good, but there is that baseline feeling of it just not performing as good as it should. There are two modes, fidelity and performance, and neither are solid. Neither lock 30 frames in the fidelity mode with a higher visual, and it doesn't lock 60 if you put it in performance either. There's always going to be dips if you're in gunplay or if you're in like a big fast car chase. Not too much, not too noticeable on the performance mode, but it is in there. As you know, GTA is a game that encourages carnage, and especially in the new ones, you're going to be experimenting to see how much you can do on new hardware, and the fact that the games can't keep up with that is just a major shame. I mean, these are PS2 upscales. It's ludicrous that they're not 4K 60, 4K 120, whatever. So the performance side of it is kind of crazy. We should talk about the music stuff too, because it's a lot of the problems I think hinge on the fact that they called this the Definitive Edition, and maybe that was just a name that they bandied around in the marketing department for a bit because it's the 20th anniversary, and they didn't want to just use that again because they did it for the 10th anniversary. So they'll go, okay, this is the Definitive Edition, but tons of worthwhile, meaningful, identifiable songs are cut from this version, and they were removed from the original 10th anniversary edition. But I don't care when you're calling it the definitive one. It should be in there.
I mean, it's again, I've kind of got one foot in both camps on this issue. Same. Because when this was first announced, it was revealed the night before the launch, I think, that a bunch of the songs from Vice City and San Andreas weren't making it over. A lot of iconic songs like Video Killed the Radio Star and stuff like that. I know why. I know why they haven't made it over, because video game music licensing is such a nightmare, especially when you're licensing things. Sorry? Mm-hmm.
Ironic for the name of that song that they just at the end of it, video did kill the radio star.
It really did. But yeah, the video game music licensing issues are obviously huge. They've impacted a bunch of other games. But like exactly what you said, when you're calling something the Definitive Edition, when you don't have the music that is so identifiable to it, and more importantly, and this is the stickler I can't get over, when you're taking those older games that do have the music off sale and delisting them, so you have to buy the new versions, it's not definitive, is it?
It's just, for me, it's categorically opposite of the Definitive Edition. And it's all this, like I said, it's the small things. I mentioned in yesterday's video how they've made a lot of hedges solid objects, so they just bounce off now, which fundamentally for me affects a lot of the shortcuts that I like using, especially in GTA 3. But it's even things like if in San Andreas, when you put weight on or when you get muscly, that used to change the walking animation, and that's the same now. It's just like little things like that I feel overall, they took out the cinematic camera, they removed the co-op mode from San Andreas, little things that pointed to a team back in the day, back in 2004, that really were just pushing the boundaries of what they could get away with back then. They were really pushing the technology. And San Andreas at the time felt like this really cool, expansive world on the other side of the screen. And it felt like there was an energy to that developer at the time that just isn't here anymore. It feels like it's been stripped away. And literally, it's not Rockstar, it's Grove Street Games. But you can tell there's been no real executive oversight. The base reality of that is that a lot of the original staff have now left Rockstar, so there is that. But it just feels like there wasn't enough quality control. There's also the way the menus are handled, the quite cheap feel to the menus. I just don't like any of that stuff. I think it's weird when it says like vibration is true or false. It's just things like that where I'm like, who put this together? Who coded this thing? And then you've got all the different spelling mistakes on the up-res textures because they let an AI algorithm do it and they didn't touch the rest of it up. It feels very like kicked out the door. And I feel like of all the publisher-developer combos, you could have waited. Like obviously the answer to Take-Two ultimately, but it's Rockstar. They have enough money. They could have waited.
It is, and I think, kind of like circling back to the title of this video of why the launch in particular has been so frustrating, has been so disastrous, it's that, they could have been upfront about this stuff, but the fact is we went into this project on 59-ish seconds of footage, that one big trailer that we got before, barely any screenshots, barely any
carefully
comparisons.
Omitting a lot of gameplay too.
A lot of gameplay kind of like left up in the air, and no reviews, which is obviously a biggie. People are buying it currently on blind faith because the review embargo isn't, I don't even know what's really happening with it, but it's certainly not up at the moment. I'm not sure if other outlets got codes or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is there were no reviews to tell people exactly what they were getting, and there was very little actual footage released from Rockstar themselves about it. They were very much kind of banking on people going, that's GTA, I'm going to go buy it, and then they had to figure out what they bought after the fact, which is why we're getting all of these, viral images of,
responses.
glitches and viral responses, yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's funny now, ironically, because Strauss Zelnick, I think it was him who did say, oh, we're looking at doing more remasters going forward if these ones sell. And at the time, we were like, it's GTA, it's going to sell ridiculously. Maybe part of him was like, I don't know about this. We're going to have to just see how this goes. But yeah, there's a whole, like I said, there's a whole thing to the way that I feel that Rockstar have massaged the message. I think that by mentioning GTA 5, that let a whole thing sprout over there. And we're going to talk about that in another video because I think it's worth its own separate discussion. But the base version that exists right now, the one that they have put out, the one that you can just buy, is just kind of fundamentally lackluster. Even if you take away all the GTA 5 comparison stuff, like you said, there's very obvious glitches and bugs, frame rate dips, things that don't add up to what should be a definitive edition. And that's alongside all the music side of things and the way that it controls in the modern day, or the big old mess in regards to how they've handled textures and modeling and character models and stuff like that. So I do think it's kind of all over the place. We should end on something positive though, because you had some nice little positive general reactions that we should end on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, again, we could talk about the disaster of the launch. We could talk about the rollout and stuff.
Oh, it'll be all we talk about for
it will be.
Now, mate.
It will be, which is why we need to finish with something positive. But there is something in there, isn't there? Like, even throughout all of these issues, I was playing GTA 3 last night, and I was having a lot of fun. Not just because it is a nostalgia trip, but because when it works, like, it feels good to play. And when it looks good and it's not freaking out due to the AI algorithm, it also looks good to just kind of like watch. And it's what you wanted from this game mode. It's just, it's going to go down as one of the year's most inconsistent games, and I think that's maybe the best word to sum it up. You know, you can have these moments of beauty with it, you can have these moments of utter shambles with it, and I think, you know, it's going to suck if you come down harder on the shambles side of things and get that experience than you do the other one, but yeah.
No, I mean, the thing is, like, it's still GTA at the core for the most part. Like, you know, if you, there is a way to have fun with these games. My thing is that they absolutely are the PS2 games. Like, as someone who literally goes between the PS2 ones and these new ones, I have them all installed. I've had them installed for the last few months in preparation for this. The animations are exactly the same. The feel is exactly the same. Like, the only changes are the aiming. And I am someone who loves those original games. I'll play them quite a lot. So there is obviously a appeal to those games. They're timeless for a reason. They're some of the most popular games of all time for a reason, so you can still have fun with them, and the visuals do boost that. But there's obviously the jury still out on whether seeing all of San Andreas' map from the top of a single building makes it feel better or worse. But that's a whole thing to sort of be talked about. But yeah, there's still an enjoyable product here. I just don't think it's worth £55 / full price. And they've got a lot of work to do before it's worth telling people, hey, you should play this.
Yeah, there's something good in there. They just botched the launch. You know, we didn't even talk about, and I'll quickly touch upon it, the fact that it's only digital only for now. So you're paying for the most expensive version of the game before the boxed version drops, and it'll be cheaper. You know, it's stuff like that where it's kind of, it just feels like they've launched it to try and get as people, you know, using their intrigue clicks, as we might put it here, just to try and get themselves in at the highest markup, and then kind of rinse those people dry, which obviously isn't good when Rockstar does it, isn't good when CD Projekt Red does it, isn't good when any studio does it.
The thing that's going to be weird as well is the physical releases. Obviously, it's at the start of December. I think it's December 8th, might be a little bit after that, but the amount of patches that this is going to get, and then the physical edition will then need all those patches to catch back up to where this version is. It just feels like you're better off waiting, like regardless of whether you want to get the digital one or the physical one. There's a lot of work that needs doing for this thing. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Are you on the fence? Did you buy in? What are your thoughts on the gameplay so far? And what do you want to see happen to these games going forward? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye.